the work of equity and belonging is not about shame. It's about compassion. And I think that for way too long, we've used these words, and some people, not people like us, have weaponized them, right? Yeah, so how do we start creating circles of compassion, of understanding, of being willing to listen and learn from each other without immediately wanting to change?
Welcome to the Women on the Move podcast. I'm your host, Sam Saperstein. In today's episode, I'm speaking with Michelle de la Isla, CEO of Hack.Diversity, an organization dedicated to creating opportunities for the next generation in technology, especially those from underrepresented communities. Michelle's life story is a testament to resilience and determination. From experiencing homelessness and single motherhood to becoming a mayor and a Harvard graduate, she's navigated numerous challenges with gratitude and joy, which she now brings to her role at Hack.Diversity. Today, we'll explore Michelle's incredible journey and her vision for Hack.Diversity, and I'm so excited to have this conversation with her. Michelle, welcome to the Women on the Move podcast. It's great to have you on.
Thank you for having me.
You've had a really remarkable journey, so I want to start from the beginning. You've experienced single motherhood, you've experienced homelessness, you have risen up to become CEO of Hack.Diversity, and along the way, you were mayor of Topeka, Kansas. Oh my goodness, there's so many things to talk about. But take us back to your youth, growing up, and the influences that led you to some of those career choices.
So I'll start by saying the whole mayor period of the life, I didn't ever think that I was going to do that. If you would have asked anybody when I was younger, this is going to be my life trajectory, I would have said, you must be using some pretty strong medication.
Okay, we'll get there.
But influences as a child that really shaped who I am and how I see the world mostly come from my grandparents and my neighbor Rosa, who raised me like I was her own child. And it's been this trajectory of overcoming that has been very strong in my family. My mom, I was born here in New York. Difficult circumstances for my mom. She fled for her safety to Puerto Rico. My grandparents ended up raising me for a while. And then my neighbor took over. And just the fact that I saw the amount of selflessness that my grandmother just exhibited. She used to work, like Mama used to work in the morning. Mima used to work a third shift. And their little world revolved around who was going to be watching me while I was asleep and then who was going to be there in the morning. And Mima, who worked a third shift, used to watch me during the morning. And the way that they worked, I mean, like, as long as it was legal, ethical, and moral, I mean, they would do it. They knew how to make flower arrangements. They learned how to make vertical blinds. Mama cleaned houses. I think she even did tarot for a while. I mean, wow. She did whatever she needed to do to make sure that she could provide for her family. And then my neighbor Rosa and her husband Eddie, they were just beautiful souls that didn't need to take me into their home to make sure that I was fed and taken care of and nurtured. But they did.
That's incredible.
And I think that it's that gratitude that I have for all the people throughout my life and in that journey that invested in me when even I didn't know my own worth, that just has me fueled to make an impact and serve others.
That is incredible. What a community around you, not only your family, your immediate family, but neighbors who become so important to the family. I just love that. So take us through your early career, and then how did you become mayor of Topeka, Kansas? What was the story behind that?
Ended up, I graduated finally from Wichita State University, ended up moving to Wichita, and my ex-husband and I got relocated to Topeka. And in the process of that relocation, I started getting involved with different organizations, one of them being Mana National. They are a group of women that started an organization in DC to do advocacy for Latina women. And through that process, I learned that a lot of our Black and Latina girls were not graduating high school at the time that I was working on all these things. And it was just like, Mana has this great program called Las Hermanitas, which is a mentorship program. Let's see if we could figure out how to start that in Topeka. And it didn't work the way they had it, but then Kim and I my best friend ended up just like turning it into a conference of bringing in Black and Latina women talking about their past, their path. Because I think that oftentimes you see us with a suit and you just think, oh my God, their life was perfect, right? Oh my God, they're looking so great. And nobody actually gets to see the whole universe that's behind you and everything that you carry. And we wanted to demystify that for the girls, to create an environment of inspiration for them to just try to pursue some sort of post-secondary education. And downtown redevelopment stuff happens, and they're looking for young people to be involved because we had this significant attrition of young people in Topeka, Kansas. And one thing led to the other, and they're like, who talks to kids? And it's like, oh, Michelle. And I didn't even know that what I was doing was organizing. They're like, get the kids involved, and we're doing downtown redevelopment. And what's redevelopment? And what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And started showing up at these meetings. And after years, it was one of my mentees that spoke in the council meeting, and we ended up getting that vote. I mean, she wasn't the sole reason, but she was a very impactful reason that helped us get that vote. And that was it. It was like, oh my gosh, like we were able to do this. You're organizing the community. You need to run for office. And I'm like, one of these things does not look like the other in Topeka, Kansas. I don't think that's going to work. And it did.
That is remarkable. So you had built this community responsiveness. You got a program launched. You showed you can work through bureaucracy, and I'm sure whatever else comes with that. And all of a sudden, the seed was planted in other people and then to you.
Indeed.
And so when someone said to you, okay, Michelle, this is it. You got to do this. Tell us about what happened at the dinner table that night when you reflected on it.
No. And it took several times to be asked. Typically, it takes women 7 times to be asked for them to consider running.
To run for office, 7 times.
And,
okay.
And it was way more than 7 by the time that I finally sat down with my girls. And I was just like, okay, kids, let's have a conversation. I'm being asked to do this. And at this point in time, those poor kids had been going to council meetings with their little headphones and their books. And Lorraine, my youngest, says, Mom, is that like being president? And I'm like, no, it's like that meeting. And I would be on the side in one of those chairs. And she just looks at me and she says, Mom, if you do this when you're showing me that we could do anything.
Oh, my goodness.
And how do you say no to that?
You cannot. I mean, that your own daughter saying this to you, be the inspiration to me, that's done. That's incredible. I love the fact that you were bringing them to city council meetings.
I was a single mom. There was no other choice.
Yeah. So they were seeing the political process up front. Okay. So you become mayor of Topeka. What was that race like? Was it a difficult race to run?
It was difficult. I was the only female running. There were 5 of us, everybody Caucasian. And I was the first, not only single parent, but also the first person who was full-time employed that was running for that seat.
Wow.
And it was so interesting to see the attacks that were used against me. Like, how can she do this? Like, how can she have a job and be a mayor? And it's just like, had I had a different chromosome, more than likely I would be lauded for being so like aggressive and so self-serving to the community,
right? Like
so available to the city. There were a lot of challenges, and eventually some of the attacks became a little bit racial, very light connotations, very Kansas nice, but they happened. And in the end, we ended up winning the race by 500 votes. So it wasn't a significant number, but it happened. But it was hard.
Which really, again, is a reminder, every vote counts.
Absolutely.
Everywhere. All the time. So you must vote. And I'm wondering then, as mayor, so you're coming in, what did you want to accomplish and how would you describe your leadership style?
The accomplishments, I'm a huge believer of leadership by understanding what people need and being able to bring people together to accomplish those goals. And the big things that we were talking about, Topeka had very low self-esteem as a community. We were having issues with economic development. We were struggling with retention of people in our community and growth. And just we started having some really meaty conversations about equity and belonging in our community. So as a mayor, that was interesting to navigate that because I was doing DEI work in a Fortune 500 at the time when I was, in my private job. And it was interesting. I would characterize my leadership as, again, just like asset building, asset-based building. Like, okay, who is here in the community that we can empower to do things? Because if you're a leader, you understand that you're not the one doing the things. You're empowering and finding the resources and helping others be their best selves. But it was hard. I had probably the 4 hardest years that many mayors faced, because not only did we have COVID at the bookend of my race, but I also had the fatal shooting of a Black male by 2 white officers, and I was the first Afro-Latina to be elected to that seat. So the expectations and the fears that came into that first year, and the bookend of having to navigate a community through crisis while I was also running a congressional race were just, it was grueling.
Can you take each of those just different events and talk about what made the difference to you to get through? Was it the relationships that you had? And how did you help heal the community going through each situation? Maybe the shooting first.
So the shooting, I'll tell you, healing the community, nobody can take that job on. You have to create spaces for people to feel, and especially when the pressures are high. I'll never forget, we, in our council meetings, had a section for public comment. And the public comment section was always very full. And it was individuals sharing the horrible experiences they had had. Wow. And at a certain point, there was a lot of emotion and anger in those experiences being shared. And there were council members that were like, we're just going to stop the public comment. Oh. And it was just like, we're not.
Yeah.
We're not,
No.
Because this is the space that we have created. Do we have to stay sometimes past midnight and we're exhausted? Absolutely. But this is what we signed up for. And our community is hurting, so we need to do that. I was very grateful that I had phenomenal relationships. Our Black pastors in Topeka, oh my gosh.
Really,
they were just phenomenal. They are the backbone. And the blessing of having the relationship with them prior.
Yes.
And being able to have their words of understanding and help convey information, because of course there's no trust, right?
Right.
You have lack of trust from the police department, lack of trust from the Black and Native American community in Topeka. A lot of the people from Prairie Band Potawatomi, which is the tribe that's really close to Topeka, were also coming and sharing some experiences. But just giving people a chance to speak. And then more importantly, I think that the part that I loved the most was helping people understand the lane. So if you come and you advocate for something that is happening at a state level, you're not being effective here. However, if I help you understand that this part is a state responsibility, this part is federal, this one is FOP contract, then you're able to better advocate for yourself. And I think that eventually, with time, with people coming together, with the help of pastors, with the community being open, I wouldn't call it complete healing, but at least we got to a point in which we could work together and change started to happen.
That's critical. You have to have that first step. Tell us about COVID then and what you had to really manage through. And I'm only imagining we're all dealing with unbelievable uncertainty and fear at the time. You had to mobilize a community. You had to get over all that fear and collaborate to get things done. I'm sure there were unpopular positions you had to take along the way.
Absolutely.
Tell us what that was even like.
Well, the first part is that when you deal with COVID, typically the health department falls under the county, at least in our community, right? So you had county leaders
that you also had to talk
that you had to work with.
Yes.
But then I was the mayor of the largest city. So like our city had 127,000 people. The county had 183.
Oh.
So it was a really interesting dance to navigate. But again, the blessing of pre-existing relationships. So Dusty Nichols, who is the person that ran emergency management, and I had already established a relationship via, by the way, the podcast that I created as mayor.
Great.
And so Dusty and I had a great relationship. Gianfranco Pezzino, Linda Oakes, who was the person that was running the health department, and Gianfranco was the chief medical officer in charge of the crisis. Just having this group of people and being able to harness the creativity of all of them was fabulous. But I tell you what, the challenges were the fights of misinformation, of just trying to help people understand why policies were being made, trying to figure out and working with the chamber to understand how we could better support our businesses to go remote and how to create policies that would help them become sustainable. Individuals that didn't really think that the virus was real and did not want to abide by wearing a mask, or even when the vaccines came. I mean, it was to me, it was very surprising how polarizing a medical issue could be.
Yeah.
Especially when you have people dying by the thousands on a daily basis. And it's not just in the US, it was global. It was heartbreaking. But again, capitalizing on the phenomenal people in our community. So one of the structures that we created, I was getting information from the Bloomberg Harvard City Leadership Program. Thanks to Mayor Bloomberg, we ended up having a lot of education from Johns Hopkins and Harvard. So we had Johns Hopkins,
on the health issues.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then we had different policies from Harvard. And we were able to convey all of that really solid, unbiased information in different groups. So I had groups of churches, I had the school districts, we had the business sector. So we had like different constituency groups that then they would start sharing the information because it was unbiased information. We were not creating it.
Right.
And that really helped a lot.
That's great. That's amazing. I mean, thank God for those relationships and the way it sounds like you really pulled everybody together in a time of crisis, made them feel comfortable.
We tried.
Yeah.
Didn't make everybody happy.
Well,
but we tried.
Nobody was, I think, anywhere. But it's fascinating to me, you know, being a New Yorker, seeing how it unfolded here in New York, in and around New York City, to understand what it was like in Topeka and what you had to deal with. It's fascinating, you know, to know that you probably had such strong relationships and engagement at a local level that, you know, we don't always have here when there's so many more people and perspectives. But it's great to hear how you pulled that together.
We pulled that together. It wasn't just me. It was our community.
So I did read somewhere that after this time when you're serving as mayor, you felt like you needed to heal and take a break. And I can understand why. What did you do afterwards to reset yourself, to kind of get back in?
First thing I did was remodel my whole house.
Oh,
because
all
I
right.
felt like I had to use that energy in something physical. So like I tore up carpet and installed a herringbone pattern floor in my family room, repainted the whole house, and just started processing what the next step would be. And at that point in time, I had always dreamt of going to Harvard. I was told very young that I was really smart, but not Harvard smart.
Ooh,
and
I like that.
Because of the Bloomberg Harvard City Leadership Program that I participated as mayor, I had made amazing relationships in Cambridge. And I was told, hey, if you really, once you're done with your term as mayor, if you really want to come to Harvard, we're happy to support you.
I love it.
And I had some amazing letters of reference. I worked on my application. And as I'm working on my application, a really good friend of mine, Katie Apelduda, she's like, hey, what are you doing for work now? And I'm like, well, I think I'm going to go to school. And she's like, you need a job. And she said, I have the perfect job for you. It's being a managing director in a venture philanthropy. You would be like helping decide which organizations that are doing social impact are going to get funding. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that sounds phenomenal. And that happened to be in Boston, which is right next to where I wanted to go to school.
Right.
And I ended up getting both the offer and the acceptance into Harvard on the same day.
No
March
kidding.
18th. Yes.
That's incredible. I'm sure that was a fun
wild.
day to celebrate with your family.
It was wild.
That is great. So it was meant to be to do both of these things.
It was, apparently.
It was apparently. And going from being in public sector service then to, you know, the new work and a student again, how did you balance that all of a sudden? I hope you found the peace.
What's that worse? What's that word? Balance. What is that?
How did you enable yourself to just get through day to day?
Discipline. I knew what I was there for. It was really interesting to see the difference of experience that I had in some of my classmates in the cohorts. And I knew that I had to every single morning wake up early, go to the gym so that I could actually function correctly, read really early, be at school early so that I could do meetings in between classes over Zoom. And I knew that once I got home, I was going to be doing meetings till 8 o'clock. And then from 8 o'clock to 11, I was reading and doing homework.
Wow.
So discipline.
Rigor.
It was a lot of rigor, but it was so worth it.
Oh, I bet. Okay, so tell us about Hack.Diversity, the mission, and what you're trying to do with the organization.
We focus with the host companies that have the opportunity to host our fellows for an internship, and we try to help them understand with their new management, these are the things that you could be doing better at. Just today, I was doing a class on making the implicit explicit. Like, for example, a lot of people have the job description and they think that that's the job.
Right.
But in reality, there's a lot of preferences in the workplace and there's a lot of traditions in the workplace that we don't talk about outwardly, which for a person that's brand new makes it a very hostile environment, even though that's never the intention. So we work with these host companies as well to help them understand what are things that they could be doing better. So by the time that they have the pairing of the intern and the company, the TA people, then the matches are phenomenal. And it's interesting. Our first year is always interesting bringing people in. But then once a fellow goes through the program, they're like, we get it. Oh my gosh, they were phenomenal fellows.
Wow.
88% of our fellows are getting job offers.
That's fantastic. Do you bring something new to these host companies that they just haven't seen or done before? You know, what is that connection that really clicks with them where they say, now I understand how I can make other people with different backgrounds more successful here?
I don't know. I think that one of the most powerful things that we do is that we connect these companies together. We connect them
With
together
each other,
when we,
other host companies. Okay.
because I mean, it's one thing for me and I think that we all remember right after the murder of George Floyd, all these beautiful companies had these fabulous intentions of doing right. So they ended up finding an individual that happened to be of color to do some DEI work and try to understand and make some changes in organizations. And it ended up causing a little bit of challenges. So for a person of color to come and tell somebody that may not understand their own experience, I've made these changes, it's easy. But when you put people together that are of the same experience, that are trying to do their best, that have the same fears, and you're like, this is what I had to do in my company in order for me to be able to see some change.
Yes.
And this is the risk that I mitigated. It's very different when it comes from me.
Right.
And I think that it's very powerful that we're able to provide content,
Yes.
but we provide a community.
It's so true. That's so true. People who are trying to build new things in their own companies without having that structure or friends or a network to talk to. That's phenomenal. And so how do you think that plays out over time? I could see if fellows have really good experiences, hopefully they're culture carriers, and then they land in certain roles, and then things change from there, and then you can really see more long-term benefits.
Well, you'd hope, because we're bringing maybe 2-3 fellows per company right now. I would hope, and my dream would be, and the vision would be, that eventually we would have enough fellows that have been promoted that are able to be not only culture carriers, but culture transformers.
Oh, yes.
In a way in which everybody feels like they belong, no matter who you are, what walk of life. Because that's the world that we all want. We all want to feel like we belong.
I love that. As a practitioner as well of DE&I, diversity, inclusivity, and equity, we see the landscape changing. We certainly are very committed to this ourselves. But this takes a lot of work and dedication over years and years. It can't really be a response to certain events. It has to be long-term groundwork that you're laying. And so how do you think Hack.Diversity really helps that longer-term objectives that you're trying to put in place?
I think that a great part of it is the relationship building.
Yeah.
And the long-term relationship that we have with companies. We've been operating since 2017. The organization started in 2016. One of our first companies was Rapid7 in Boston. And I can tell you that the organization and us, the relationship have been so robust that we're actually in the point of trying to figure out, when does a company graduate Hack? Because I mean, we don't want to. We want them to be able to just like keep growing.
Yeah.
And we still want them to be able to work with our fellows. But at what time do we say the company graduated? And what we've come to consensus of is that we still want to be a resource to the new managers that are coming in through the company, so that we can add to what already is happening in DE&I and corporations. We know that we're not going to change the DE&I cultures in these organizations because they already have them. We just want to be able to be additive.
When you think about changing culture like that, knowing that there could be setbacks over time, the appetite might be less, how do you keep going when you feel that pressure and sort of the outside world saying, nope, we're done with that, or we made it, we have the progress, right? We're done with the work. How do you keep going?
I just look at my fellows. I am the luckiest person in the universe because I get the opportunity to interact with these amazing fellows that remind me every single day of why I do what I do. And I don't get to see them on a everyday basis, but their stories, I carry them with me every single day. So like I'll go to one of the events and you hear their stories. And I'll just give you one story of one of the fellows that just absolutely almost had me in tears because the story so much resonated with mine. We had what we call the wrap party, which is a graduation party. And I was in Boston this year. And this fellow gets up and he had won an award. We have something called CARE values. We operate on community, advocacy, resiliency, and empathy. Those are the values at Hack. And based on each value, our fellows at the end of the year get to have an award for each of those. And then one gets the CARE, which is all of those.
Overall award. Got it.
The young man that ended up receiving the CARE award, which we call the Jody Rose Award, she was our founder, he stands up and he says, I just want to be grateful because everything that I've been doing for the fellows, I just show up the way that I wanted to have somebody show up for me when I was younger.
Wow.
He was sharing how in the environment that he grew up in, there were some not healthy things happening all around. And he was always very different. He wanted to play with his computer. He wanted to read books, and he didn't really fit in. And he had kind of felt alone, like he was doing all of this, but he kept pushing forward. And when he got to Hack, it wasn't so much that we added to his talent, because he had the talent.
Yeah.
What he needed was community and people to be around him, to support him in the same journey. I was just standing there and I was just like sobbing, because I'm just thinking, this is just beautiful. So that's why I come back every day.
I love that. It makes you think of all the other people out there, children, young adults who don't have that. And that's what, like you, makes me keep going, because the need is so great. The talent is there, but they need that opportunity and community. I really love the community thread you're pulling on. It's so evident when you tell your story, whether it's as mayor or at Hack.Diversity, how important that is for you, even your childhood and upbringing. Do your daughters see that too? Do they have that sense too? You convey that to them?
It's interesting. Your kids are the people that no matter you could you could cure cancer, and they're always going to find something that you can do better at, right?
Yes.
It's awesome that they keep you humble, but they do. Actually, it's been super sweet to see how the girls often talk about how they love the community that they've grown up in, because it's been a very non-traditional community. We didn't have like a grandparents around in Kansas while they were growing up. So we ended up having all my friends that were their aunts and uncles and
your
extra bonus. Exactly. As a
family.
single mom, I had all these friends that actually were in a marriage. So they had like their bonus families that they could interact with. And they always said like, man, Mom, you really worked so that we could have like this robust community. So
that's incredible. I mean, you've talked about your daughters as being such a source of pride for you, which is so understandable.
And my son, yes.
And son. How has motherhood really shaped how you think about leadership and what you bring to your professional life?
It's interesting. I was homeless when I was pregnant with Eric. And to me, leadership is selfless. And Eric was that first glimpse of loving something more than you, that you wanted to make a change. If I would have never had Eric, I don't think that I would have overcome homelessness. I don't think that I would have been like, okay, something's not right. I can't have my kid go through the same stuff that I've gone through. When Christina was born, here you have Eric, very much a boy. And then Christina's born and she's very quiet and very silent. And Christina taught me that even though we're all from the same family, we don't all think and have the same needs. So how to adjust to be a better mom for Christina, which is another tenet of leadership, which is understanding that everybody on your team may not have the same needs. They may have tons of talent, but you have to figure out how to show up for them so that they could be the best that they can be. And then Lorraine, who's the baby, and as you can imagine, she is a ball of energy. She is our mega extrovert of the household.
I love it.
She doesn't ask, she demands and she gets. And she used to run the house. She still does. And I had to learn to figure out how to harness that energy and help her be all of who she is without tampering that energy, but at the same time figuring out a way that I could coach her in a way that she would receive my feedback and with the love that she needed to receive it, so that she wouldn't feel like I was trying to dampen that light that she has.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, I mean, like, my kids were my first leadership school.
Right. And you can see each of them being a different person, especially from the next. You need to find that different leadership style, influencing technique, whatever it is, to bring out the best in them and get them to work as a team.
Oh, gosh, yes. Oh, they do that just fine on their own.
That's great.
Oh, yeah. They do that just fine on their own. They love to gang up on mom.
But they must be so proud. And, you probably conveyed to them, both in speaking, but in showing what was important to you, the values, and a perseverance capability, really, to go from crisis that you're managing for a city to personal changes. That always rubs off on children. Do they ever say that to you? Mom, wow, how'd you even do that? Or thank you.
It's a blessing and a curse in the sense that we've had the conversation of, Mom, because of you, I always feel like when things are really rough, I have to keep on going.
Wow.
And at the same time, they always feel like they're underperforming. And I'm like, no.
Yeah, no. Right. Shut off.
Because they put us so much pressure, because they're like, Mom, look at what you've done. And Eric sometimes and we talk and he's like, Mom, I'm 28 now. Look at what I'm doing with my life. And I'm like, Eric, dude, at 28, I had 3 kids and I was completely alone trying to raise those kids. And I was feeding you guys white rice and Vienna sausages. Yeah. So hold off. You're doing great.
Cut yourself slack.
So it's this constant reminder to them that don't compare yourself. You are your own beautiful, wonderful, mystical human. And I want you to just experience life at your pace.
And everything you did for them meant that they could hopefully make different choices from a different place, right?
Absolutely.
Let's go back to Hack.Diversity. I'd love to hear, what are your goals for the program? What does the future look like? And that big ambition you have out there for the organization.
So right now, I mean, of course, what we want to do, took over the organization. It's been exactly a year, September 1st.
All right.
And the first year, my goal was to understand what were the things that were happening internally. I very much with a venture background and a business development background in the back of my head. I wanted to understand what the business was, how it operated, how it makes money, how do we keep it sustainable, all the things that really matter. What was the culture? What changes we needed to make? What was the organizational structure? So year 1 down, we pretty much have that. And at this point in time, the next few years are going to be growing Hack, hopefully nationally.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And in order for us to do that, we need to capitalize on the previous years that we've had to maximize on data. I am a data lover. And the numbers speak for themselves, but we really haven't had a marketing strategy because we were running like a startup, right? So now we're starting to trying to create brand awareness, trying to understand what adds value to the host companies in addition to what we already do, trying to understand from the customer what they want more of, and then creating a thought leadership pillar of people understanding what our philosophy is. Because I think that what Hack has that is very special is that in these times of uncertainty, and especially for individuals like you and I who are working in the DE&I sector when it's so under attack, right? Because of the misunderstanding, helping people create a new language. I feel like Hack has a huge responsibility to help people understand that true DE&I is truly leadership. Period. It's leadership and strategy. By 2045, most of the country is going to look like me. So if I am a good business owner and I want to see my business succeed, how do I invest in strategies to help me stay relevant?
That's right.
Before it's too late, right?
That's right.
And then if I want, and I'm looking at just some basic numbers, by the next 5 or 6 years, most of the boomer generation is going to retire, which means that we're going to end up having a brand new generation of brand new managers.
That's right. That's right.
That need leadership training, and the groups are going to start becoming more diverse. So if you don't start planning for these things, that's the scope that I want people to understand. The work of equity and belonging is not about shame. It's about compassion. And I think that for way too long, we've used these words, and some people, not people like us, have weaponized them, right? So how do we start creating circles of compassion, of understanding, of being willing to listen and learn from each other without immediately wanting to change the way that we think, and understand that when we're talking about somebody's biases, we're talking about things that they've inherited from families and from, the system and the context.
And it's true no matter who you are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this dream that, I'm going to have a predominantly minority organization and it's going to be very diverse and it's going to be perfect. It's not, because all of us carry some bias. So how do we navigate those things? So I feel like the next horizon for Hack is to make sure that we are a huge thought leader on how we start approaching this with compassion and empathy so that we can really start working together, honing in on leadership to help organizations grow.
I love it. And in technology in particular, it's critical. It's obviously a growth area. It's a well-paid area. It's going to dictate so much of our lives going forward. Have you discovered, when it comes to technology, people are maybe more interested in it than they thought they'd be, or kids who might have said, I'm just not good at science, math, I can't be good at technology. Do they have breakthroughs in their thinking about what technology could be and that they have those skills?
I think that right now it's an interesting question, considering that most individuals are digital natives. I remember a time, right, that
100%.
I didn't even know what a cell phone was. Right. And then all of a sudden Facebook showed up and it's like, face what?
I talked on phones that were attached to walls.
I know and we had to do the circle rotary thing, the rotary. Yes. But I'm not old. And but yeah, absolutely. So I think that now, there's a revival and an interest in tech work because it's so ever present in our lives.
That's great, though. You reminded me that my son, when he was probably about 2, and we were in New York City, he, saw people swiping things like iPads and phones probably at the time. So there was a bus stop right outside of our apartment, and the ads would move. And he went up and he tried to swipe the giant ad on the bus stop. I thought that was great.
Oh,
But
sweet precious baby.
that is the native digital, person coming out. And I hope that's true, because we know that women, people of color are so underrepresented in technology. It's a real focus for us to get more of them in there, obviously, as practitioners and leaders. When I think about spaces like AI and I don't see that diversity of thought and representation, I get really worried about how those tools would be developed and ultimately used. And so I look at organizations like yours and really value the work that you do. And I hope that through that teaching and the thought leadership, that it's not the fellows only you're influencing. It's all these organizations.
That's the hope.
Yeah. So Michelle, if people want to learn more about Hack.Diversity, get involved, where should they go? What should they do?
Well, first of all, follow us on all the socials. We're in Instagram, we're in Facebook, everywhere, LinkedIn, as you can imagine. And our website is Hack.Diversity.com.
Great.
That's how to reach us.
All right. And people can obviously see what the great organization, the work is of the organization. And do you have stories on there too, in terms of?
Oh, absolutely. I would invite anybody that's interested to learn about the organization to take a look at the impact report this year.
Great.
The numbers are amazing.
Well, Michelle, it is a pleasure to talk to you. It is great to hear about your backgrounds. Keep going. There's so many people. You have a lot of Lorraines back here saying, go become mayor and do great things. So thank you for speaking with us today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to my conversation with Michelle de la Isla. I love her story of a child born in New York City who becomes the mayor of Topeka, Kansas during a crisis, and is now leading an organization to put more underrepresented people in technology. It is such a story of grit, perseverance, and hope. If you like these episodes, please follow them on your favorite podcast app, and please share with others. I hope that you learned something today that will help you to lead with purpose.